Ho, 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 ho!
We all know that sound. Santa is coming to town. For generations, jolly old St. Nicholas has always looked like this. But over the last decade, there's been a shift. And that change has sparked a bit of debate. We're taking a trip down Santa Claus Lane to address these concerns head on. Kris Kringle, Father Christmas, St. Nicholas, or just simply Santa. This white-bearded icon is really known for bringing gifts to boys and girls all over the world. But over the last decade, questions about his race has sparked some debate. Today, we're exploring just what that is with another special presentation of Justice for All. Helping me lead today's discussion is Terry Lipsey Scott. She is the executive director of the Carter G. Woodson African American Museum in St. Petersburg. Also joining us, Mrs. Claus herself is Latanya Newell of the St. Cloud Chamber of Commerce. And last but not least, the legend himself, the real Black Santa, Dion Santa D. Sinclair. Thank you all so much for joining us today and for being a part of this really informative discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have to start with Santa, of course. This first question is directed to you. You have been sporting this red suit, of course, and delivering the gifts for some time now. When did the debate, though, surrounding race first come into play for you?
Well, I'll tell you, it started from the time I put the suit on. I never realized there was a Black Santa till I put the suit on. That's the very first time I saw Santa as being Black. And it was, for me, it was exciting. But I used to be a mall Santa. I was stationed in one of the malls here in Georgia. And I was the afternoon Santa, and the gentleman in the morning was Santa Jack, and he was white. I believe a mom came in that day. She saw Santa Jack, got the kids and came back later on in that evening. And to her surprise, there I was. She was like, "Oh, that's not the Santa we want." She started pulling the kids away. Kids were immaculately dressed. The little girl turned around. She said, "Mama, it's Santa, but it's Santa. We got to take pictures." "No, it's Santa. That's not the Santa we're looking for." She bustled them out of there. I made a statement years ago after that experience that kids don't see color. They see the fat man in the red suit, and that's all they know. They don't see color.
This next question, Latanya, is of you. I know a couple of years ago you were in a Christmas parade and you were really embracing your role as Mrs. Claus, of course. It was the first time in some 40 years or so, right, that St. Cloud had a Black Santa and a Black Mrs. Claus, but not everyone was happy about that decision. Tell us about it.
It has been an amazing experience. But that first year, you're right, the community definitely embraced it, but we had maybe one person out of the whole community that thought the idea was exactly, her words were disgusting. And so the community rallied behind the Mr. Claus and myself and embraced the fact that change was good and that we actually made history in the making, being the first Mr. and Mrs. Black Santa Claus for St. Cloud.
So Terry, this next question is for you. We recently reported that Black Santas are now walking the streets of Disney in both their Orlando and California parks. It's the first time in the company's some 66-year theme park history. I know you've actually been having Black Santa displays for some time there at the Carter G. Woodson African American Museum in St. Petersburg. Why did you feel it was important?
It's extremely important that children and individuals recognize the joy of giving. And as stated earlier, joy and giving has no true complexion, but it's important that children and families see those that look like them. The givers themselves who are responsible for the gifts provided for their children should be made quite aware that they're individuals of African American descent who actually play the role of Santas for their household and family and friends.
Are you surprised, Terry, to see that other organizations and companies as well are starting to embrace this idea of a Black Santa?
I am loving the idea. It's a time that should have been so long ago embraced. But as we evolve as a country, as a nation, as cities, states, and communities, I am indeed grateful for the evolution of the inclusion, which is so extremely important.
Now, Santa D, there has definitely been a racial reckoning in our country. And I have to ask you this, at times, do you wonder if safety is an issue? I know there was an incident in North Little Rock, Arkansas, where a family received a racist note over their Black Santa display, and that note reading, quote, "Please remove your Negro Santa Claus yard decoration." What's your reaction to incidents like these that do pop up from time to time? And are you ever concerned about your own safety?
Well, I don't even think about safety. I just do Santa because that's what I love. I believe the Lord, and I will say this, I'm a very religious individual, and I believe the Lord put me in this with this look so I can do what I do. I've been great. My beard has been great since I was about 16 years old. I started doing Santa when I was about 37 without dyeing. This is all natural, without dyeing, without coloring. And I believe that this is what I'm supposed to do. So if, I don't want to be a martyr, if that's the case, but I will do what I want to do, what I have to do till I can't do it anymore. And if I offend someone, my apologies to the offense, but I'm going to be who I am and do what I do.
Have you had any specific pushback or specific incidents happen to you outside of the woman who kind of corralled her children to get them out of there when she came back and you were there?
Not really. And I'll tell you this. I have clients, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I have clients that are of every color, every race, every nationality. I have a family that comes to me every year, and they did a story on it 2 years ago here in Atlanta. It's a little boy who started taking photos with me when he was 6 months old. He's autistic. And when he couldn't come to me, I started going to him. When I stopped doing the malls and I started doing more private events, I started going to his home directly. And they did a story. For 12 years, I've been doing it. He's autistic, and I love doing it. And so many of my clients of every color, and he's white. And they continue to come every year, year after year, no matter where I go.
What a story. Terry, I'm curious to hear about what the reaction has been like for you at the museum with your displays. We see all of the beautiful Santa Clauses behind you. What's the reaction been like?
It's extraordinary. We have families that drive from as far as Lakeland or Riverview or even South Florida just for the opportunity to engage with a Black Santa. We even have white families who've adopted Black children who want that opportunity for their children. Growing up in Savannah in the early 60s, there was never any image of a Black Santa. And to now have such an opportunity made available so that children might see reflections of themselves and the goodness of what Santa and Christmas and the holidays represent means everything.
Did you ever, when you were growing up, see Black Santas in the mall or Black Santa figurines or anything like that when you were growing up?
Absolutely not. Stated earlier, growing up in the early 60s. In fact, I can recall my dad bringing Santa to our home, and he was the jolly old white Saint Nick. So there was no essence of a Black Santa whatsoever. And even after time, those who saw Black Santas as they began to evolve discredited them by suggesting they're not the real Santa because they're Black. So no, that was not a part of my upbringing or anything that I could relate to growing up.
How about you, the real Santa, the real Black Santa? How about you when you were growing up?
No. Like I said earlier, the first time I saw a Black Santa was when I looked in the mirror with my suit on. And one of the reasons why I'm adamant about doing Santa and being good at doing Santa and making myself more realistic to the kids is because I did my very first year, I did a fall festival. And a little boy came by with his mom, and his mom says, "Don't you want to take a picture with Santa?" And he said, "No, Santa ain't Black." And it just took me aback. So from that point on, I strive to be the best Santa I could be.
Tanya, the same question of you. When you were growing up, did you ever see Black Santas anywhere?
No, I can honestly say that I did not. Um, and definitely don't remember seeing any. Again, I just remember writing out the list and being good because I was told that if I was good, Santa was going to show up. And so when we would go to the mall, I definitely don't remember what color he was. I just saw the joy and the hope of that man in that suit.
Wow. Well, thank you both. We have a lot more. Thank you, all three of you. We have a lot more to talk about, so keep it here, everyone. You know, we've talked a lot about dealing with this debate in regards to the public, but what about the conversations with our own family members and especially the kids? They too have a lot of questions. We're going to help provide some answers for that. Joining us right after the break, Dr. Kyan Conner of the University of South Florida on the best way to approach this conversation with loved ones. Justice for All returns, everyone, in just a few minutes. Welcome back to a very special presentation of Justice for All. Today we're talking about the rise of Black Santa. Joining our conversation right now is Dr. Kyan Conner, an assistant professor of mental health law and policy at the University of South Florida. Thank you, Dr. Conner, for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I want to start with the history of Black images in toys. Of course, today we're talking about a Black Santa and a Black Mrs. Claus, but there was a time where it was just a struggle to find a Black doll.
Absolutely. I remember as a child that my mother would go through very extreme lengths to find a Black Barbie doll or a Black baby doll. Would often have to have those specially made because they just weren't available in the stores. That representation is so important. And as a child, you are looking for images that reflect you, that reflect your family, that reflect your community. I think that we've come a long way, and there certainly are a lot more options on the shelves now than there used to be. But this is a historic problem, and there are many who have grown up that have never had a doll that looked like them. Luckily, my children don't have that same concern. But it still is a bit of a challenge in terms of the diversity of options for kids of color.
Now, you, of course, are an expert when it comes to mental health law. Some people might say, what is the big deal? It's just a doll. It's a toy. It's Santa Claus. But it is something that is pretty serious when it comes to children's self-esteem. When we talk about the Black Doll test that was taken back in the 40s, the results of that submitted for the historical case Brown versus Board. It was a serious case, of course, dealing with segregation, but the images that children see or don't see really do matter. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's really interesting is that there has been recreations of the doll test in recent years, and the findings remain the same, that often young kids of color will have a preference for lighter skinned or white dolls. And it's interesting because we start to develop sort of notions about race a little bit later on. But even young children, kindergarten, first grade, there can be preferences. And I think it has to do a lot about what we see, our imagery. We've had conversations, right, about the fact that Disney has Black Santas now, which is amazing. But it wasn't that long ago when there were no Black Disney princesses, or when we watched some of these, iconic cartoon movies, we didn't see images of ourselves. That can have an impact on a young child. Why aren't there princesses that look like me? Why aren't there princes and kings that look like me? So this can start to have an impact on you and can follow you as you get older. So this conversation is very important. It goes to the core of our self-esteem, what we expect of ourselves, and has an impact on longer term trajectories in terms of academics and expectations in school. So the impacts of this are much further reaching than just having access to a doll.
Dr. Conner, what do you say to people who say, my child is not African American? None of this matters to me. My child, I want them to see images that look like them. Is there a space for diversity when it comes to these things? I can remember the last time I walked in a store and I saw Barbies on on a store shelf to purchase, there was a wide range of different types of Barbie dolls. There wasn't just one or two.
Absolutely. I think that this is an important conversation because Santa, for example, specifically, is a really important figure in our culture. But Santa means something different to all of us, right? Every family has their own traditions, beliefs, and customs related to Santa. So sometimes that can make this conversation challenging. But I think that our children are really smart. They have access to technology. They've seen Santa in many different forms and movies, commercials, on social media. They can tell that the Santa they took a picture with this year looks a little different than the one they took a picture with last year, or that the Santa at Wiregrass looks a little bit different than the one at International Plaza. But if they believe in the magic of Santa, right? This man who can fly around the world in a day and bring gifts to every child and fit down every chimney or into a home without a chimney, undetected, to drop off gifts, then they can also believe in the notion that Santa can take many different shapes and forms. Santa can reflect different colors and ethnicities and nationalities, that Santa can be as diverse as the beautifully diverse world that we live in, so that all people can see Santa in a way that connects with them. And I think that we're beginning to understand that and recognize the importance of that more now than perhaps ever.
Let's bring in our panelists, our other guests here, so we can get their reaction to some of the things that you've been saying to us. I'll bring this question and pose this question to Terry. I know you've made it a mission to have the black dolls and the other ornaments on display every year. What are your thoughts as you listen to what Dr. Connor has just shared with us?
I would have to say spot on. It is just, it's just extremely important that children see images of themselves, and in a very positive way. As we talk about justice for all and talking about the black dolls on the shelves, it wasn't until we began asking individuals to make it a point to donate black dolls to the Woodson that those who support us came to the realization, A, they're few and far between, but more importantly, the price tag is higher. I don't know that anyone has really looked into that measure, but so many of those who give to our particular toy drive and campaign, Black, white, and others, came to the realization that the black dolls were more expensive. So for many of the African American families, it remained a challenge because if you've got 3, 4 children and all wanting dolls, you've got to really be strategic about your spending power and which dolls will be most cost effective in acquiring. So I'm excited that we're in this space and we're having this conversation, but looking at the injustice of the price tag, even on the dolls that we're having to select.
I'm going to ask this next question of our Black Santa because you are still working in some spaces, I'm sure, where there are instances where parents are having to buy and supplement the gifts that you deliver on Christmas Day. What do you think about this shift to not just black or white dolls in Santas, but the almighty dollar, green, and that companies are seeing now that the African American dolls and Santas, hey, people are buying them and they're buying them up fast. What are your thoughts about that?
I will agree with Ms. Scott and say that the price tag is definitely higher. We want what we want, so we're gonna go out and get it. And I think it's a beautiful thing when a family decides, okay, even though it costs more, so my child can see that image, I'll spend it. I think it's great. I would love to see everything come to where it's not about how much it costs, but just how we can get it to keep that my child, if the child be black, white, Indian, that they're seeing that image and they're accepting it. That's what I would love to see. Forget about the price tag. Let's do what we have to do to get it.
Latanya, what are your thoughts here? Because fair is fair, and if one doll looks a certain way, shouldn't they all cost the same?
I would have to agree, definitely. But I know as a parent, just like what Santa said, I'm going to make those measures, take those steps to make sure that my child has it, just so that there is a balance and that they are able to see the diversification just in a Dow and a Santa or whatever it might be.
All right, great conversation. We are going to pause this conversation for just a moment, but when we come back, our guests will give us their final takes on this debate. Justice for All, the rise of Black Santa returns in just a few minutes. The rise of Black Santa, that has been the focus of our Justice for All conversation today. As we wrap up this discussion, I want to bring back all of our guests for our final takeaways. They have a lot to say. Santa D, we want to start with you. We know, of course, this is a busy time for Santa. What is your final parting message to those that will interact with you in the coming days?
Just keep being hopeful, and know that it doesn't matter the color of Santa. The season is still about Christ, and that's where I go. Santa's just that key element that helps bring all that together. And enjoy Christmas, no matter the color, no matter what you're going through. The biggest thing that we should be doing to make Christmas right is just loving on each other, top to bottom. It doesn't make a difference the color of the race, just loving on each other.
It is such a magical time where you see so many people opening their pocketbooks and opening their hearts and donating for different causes to make sure that people have enough to eat, and also that kids have toys and books and things during this time. It is important, isn't it?
Most definitely.
This next question is for Terry. I know that you've used your museum to help drive this diversity bus, but what can people expect this year if they come out to visit? I know things are a little bit different because of COVID.
Absolutely. Here at the Carter G. Woodson African American Museum, we have an extraordinary legacy garden that has been transformed for the holidays, where children can come and experience and interact with all the wonderful animation of holiday cheer. In addition, Black Santa will definitely be here, and we've got the huge mailbox, if by chance you miss him, for you to drop your letters in, for Santa to be certain to bring those wonderful things that are most meaningful on your list. Here in the city of St. Petersburg, we ask folks to join us, not only in coming to visit Santa, but to make donations to those who need it most. We are accepting dolls, balls, books, and we're excited to assist Santa in making available these wonderful options for children who need it most.
Latanya, this question is for you. St. Cloud's mission to have a Black Santa and a Black Mrs. Claus, it really has had a lot of success, but where do you hope this leads to next?
I just hope that it leads to the continuous of change, people embracing change, people embracing the growth in their community, and just sharing love. Take this season of change and just embrace the love in the change. Open your hearts, regardless of the dynamics of your family, your neighbor's family, or whatever it may be. You be the change you want to see in the world. And that's exactly the mindset that I took when I took on being Mrs. Claus. Definitely being the change.
Dr. Connor, your final thoughts to families that may still have a difficult time adjusting to these types of changes.
Sure. I think this has been such an important conversation, and the rise of Black Santa, the importance of Black Santa is not only about Black children being able to see themselves. This is about all children to be able to accept the notion that Santa doesn't have to be white. And I think it may be more about the parents, really, who are challenged by this scenario than the kids, who, as the real Santa says, are often colorblind to this and are just excited to see Santa. And I think part of it may just be a difficult time knowing how to talk to our children about this. It's important for us to have conversations about race and about diversity with our kids. It's important for us to instill that message that Santa can be as diverse as the beautifully diverse world that we live in. And this is the way I talk about Santa with my children. And I truly hope that we're moving into a time where we won't only see a rise of Black Santa, but Asian Santa and Latino Santa, and Native American Santa, so that we can all see ourselves reflected in the beauty of Santa at Christmas time.
Thank you all so much for this conversation and for your time today. It really has been eye-opening. So thank you for being willing to have this conversation with us. Thank you. And thank you everyone at home for watching too. Be sure to tune in next month for another Justice for All installment. Until then, be safe everyone and happy holidays.